A hooded man travels through the fog by rowboat to a patch of land where he digs a hole and buries something we can't quite see. He gets on a white horse and rides to the city in the rain. In a hospital, he greets a corpse, utters something in a foreign language, and at last hits everyone with the show's first English line: "Forgive me, Father, for I have indeed sinned." At this point, it's already clear that this will be a very interesting plot. Next, we meet the dead man's other child, Zilpha, and her husband, Thorngiri. They look suspicious, like they are hiding something. Befitting their suspicious looks, they refuse to pay the gravediggers an extra shilling to bury her father a little deeper in the ground to thwart thieves. The funeral is just getting started when James Delaney walks in. Everyone in the church is shocked to see him, some even whispering that he's back from the dead. He shocks them even more by saying something in a strange language over the grave before smearing red paint on his cheek. At the wake, through the muttering of others, we learn more about the rumors surrounding James. He's been in Africa for 10 years. His dad's lawyer, Robert Thoit, meets him and tells him he is his father's sole heir. But all he's heir to is a piece of land called Nootka Sound on the west coast of Canada. James says he would like to own this land. The next scene opens to an East Indian Company meeting, led by Sir Stuart Strange. Here we learn more about James's past. He was sent to join the EIC's private army, but after a few years, he became a raving troublemaker and left for Africa on a slave ship that sank. Too bad he didn't die, as everyone assumed, because the EIC had been negotiating with Zilpha to buy Nootka Sound. That is also a real place on Vancouver Island, which was the subject of a dispute between the British and the Spanish in the 1790s. It held importance as a fur trading post and was strategically useful for its proximity to China. The place has more personal importance for James, as we learn from his conversation with his father's butler Brace, who played with him as a child, and now appears to be the only guy he can be himself around. Papa Delaney bought both the land and a wife from the indigenous Nootka people in exchange for gunpowder. Is his mother tongue what he's been speaking? Or is it a language he learnt in Africa? Put your thoughts in the comments below. Meanwhile, we get a glimpse of some of the things on James' to-do list. Evict Helga's brothel from his father's offices. Get someone to perform an autopsy on his dad. Pay the rough guy who's raising his father's illegitimate son. Along the way, we get some clues that James isn't just a misunderstood hero. He's got some rather unsavory demons chasing him. At least he's not as bad as his brother-in-law Geary, who wants to kill him just for being not quite Christian. Later, James is invited to the East India Company. He meets Stuart, the chairman of Global Affairs. Stuart tells him he wants to buy the land and tries to sell him the idea of patriotism. However, James already knows all about the War of 1812 and how the US and Great Britain are working out a peace treaty that will establish the Canadian border. He's not about to fall for their implication that he has some patriotic duty to sell them Nootka Sound, so he refuses. Stuart loses his calm and snaps. James says good day and walks away. Then, James hires 2 gravediggers. He digs up his father and brings in an anatomy doctor to find out how his father really died. The doctor discovers something shocking. James's father did not die by natural causes. He died from a large dose of poison. James pays the doctor 3 silver coins and orders him to bury the body again. Before he leaves, James warns him that if his father's body is used for any other purpose, he will find him and kill him. James's next move is practical. He pays his father's debts. He gathers the money, £215 and 17 shillings, and gives it to those owed. As the money changes hands, a pale, beautiful woman walks toward him. She says she is his father's widow. She claims to be James's stepmother, although James does not remember her. She shows papers and says the law makes her entitled to half of the inheritance. The lawyer takes her inside to check the documents. The East India Company hears the news. They watch everything. After their offer to buy the port, fails, the arrival of this woman gives them hope again. The lawyer returns with a dispatch from Dublin. The marriage is real and legal. The company cheers quietly. The woman will have to file a lawsuit to claim the land, and winning is not certain, but trouble may come soon. The next morning, the white horse that was tied outside James's door is gone. Someone has taken it and left a name. James reads the name and his face hardens. Atticus, London's most feared executioner, shows up. For the right price, he kills anyone. Atticus tells James that someone paid to take his father's life. He points to a name and a place. James recognizes the danger and hires Atticus. Now, with two dangerous men working together, the odds couldn't be more favorable. Late one night, James senses someone following him. He turns and finds a little girl. She tells him she overheard a plot. A man named Big Silver Fang intends to kill him. The girl leads James to the ship where Silver Fang is supposed to be. To avoid notice, James anchors his boat far off and swims to the ship. When he climbs aboard, the man is not there. However, James pours petrol on the deck and sets the ship on fire. When he returns to his small boat, the girl is gone. Next, James visits Helga, the brothel owner, to collect information. Helga says she does not know where Big Silver Fang hides, but she does know who hired him. James visits the address Helga gives and meets Dr. Barton. Barton smiles like he understands more than he says. James finds out Barton is more than a surgeon. He is an American spy working in Britain. Barton asks him what he wants, and James says he wants a line of conference with the President of the United States. Barton pulls a shotgun on him, and James leaves. On his way back, Big Silver Fang attacks James, but James overpowers him and kills him. James then cuts out Silver Fang's heart and leaves the body where other agents can find it. The message is clear. Hitmen working for the East India Company will now think twice. However, during the fight, James is also badly wounded and soon loses consciousness. He wakes up after Barton treats him. The American spy hopes James will sell the land to the United States, but James says no. Barton tries to torture and break him, and then tries to persuade him gently, but James stands firm. James tells Barton he wants a monopoly, and just then, Barton realizes he should have asked sooner. Back home, James tends his wounds from the assassination attempt. He knows the factions are desperate. He has his servants send a letter to the British royal family offering to give the port to the nation. Meanwhile, the East India Company gets a copy of James's will from the lawyer. The will says that when James dies, the port goes to the United States as a gift. The company now knows they have to keep him alive, at least for now. Not long after, James's stepmother arrives at his old house. She has claimed half the port and half the property. James feels helpless and lets her stay. One night, she leaves after a performance, and a woman stops her in the street. The woman says she is a fan and asks to escort the stepmother to her idol's home. However, the woman has another plan. After a brief ride, the carriage stops, and some men seize her. She is brought before a plump man who calls himself the Duke of Richmond, but she attacks the Duke. Just then, James arrives and saves her. But all this is part of the royal family's larger plan, so they can arrest her and force her to give up the land. The next morning, royal guards come to the house. James tells his stepmother to hold out. He also says he will warn the East India Company, and they will help. The East India Company's agents arrive and stop the royal men. If the stepmother signs away her share, the company loses everything on Nootka Sound. James uses this to his advantage and helps his stepmother escape. After this, she understands the danger. She drops her claim to fight James and joins him instead. They are now united against common enemies. This second unforeseen alliance means the odds keep getting better. That evening, James goes to a ball. He meets his half-sister and her husband. The husband hates James for taking his wife's inheritance. He lashes out, and James easily grabs him and carries him from the room by the scruff. The man, embarrassed, challenges James to a duel to save face. During the gun duel, James easily defeats him but doesn't kill him. Meanwhile, James hears gunpowder trading is profitable. He finds a manufacturer, George, and gives him his last silver coins. George has never seen money like this, and he agrees. They travel to a remote farm to make gunpowder. The work is strange and dirty. They taste strange things. They need 200 liters of urine, and the hardest part is getting saltpeter. During the war between Britain and America, saltpeter is under tight royal control. The only place left with saltpeter is the East India Company's warehouse. James prepares to return to town with George, but finds his white horse will not move. The horse acts strange, and James feels danger. A large man appears and attacks him. The battle is brutal because the man is very strong, but James manages to find a way to kill him. The next day, James visits Helga again for help with the urine. He asks her to have the girls drink lots of water and bring it to the farm. Later on, James meets Atticus and plans a robbery. That night, a girl named Helga knocks on the warehouse door. She distracts the guard while another girl locks the security guard's break room from the outside. Atticus and the others slip into the courtyard and successfully steal containers of stolen saltpeter. The East India Company's leaders are furious and know James is the only person in London bold enough to steal from them. A high bounty is placed on James's head, and soon many hunters begin searching for him. The first man brave enough to follow James into the wilderness loses him at a sharp corner. When James reappears, he cuts the man's artery and walks away, leaving his body as a warning. James wants everyone to know what happens to those who betray him. The East India Company has been paying far too much, and James decides it is time to show who is really in control. He warns the men around him of the consequences of trying to betray him. Later that night, he visits Helga's brothel. He walks in calmly, pulls out half of a severed thumb, and places it on the table as a warning. Then, he takes a shining diamond from his pocket and tells them to choose between the two. The choice is simple: loyalty or death. During this time, as the Anglo-American conflict reaches its height, gunpowder becomes the most valuable resource for both sides. James, being one of the few who can produce it, quickly becomes the center of attention. Before long, Barton seeks him out. Reports from the front lines say the Americans only have enough gunpowder for 10 more days. But James is an Englishman. Giving gunpowder to the Americans would be considered treason. He prepares to refuse, but Barton surprises him. The spy recites the exact location of James's secret gunpowder farm. It turns out Barton's men have already infiltrated James's circle. If Barton tells the British about the secret, James would be executed immediately. Barton promises James safe passage to America in return for the gunpowder. James agrees, but Barton insists it must be ready in 8 days. He finds his chemist, George, and explains the deadline. George shakes his head and says that producing gunpowder that quickly will require adding chlorides. But that creates another problem. Chloride-based gunpowder must be stirred gently around the clock for 24 hours each day. One wrong move, even the smallest vibration, could cause an explosion. James knows the risks, but decides to proceed. He instructs George to begin immediately. The next day, James brings in more workers to stir the gunpowder in shifts. They work tirelessly, day and night, until the first batch is finally complete. To move the gunpowder out of London without raising suspicion, Barton spreads a rumor that 6 people have died from cholera. Late at night, a convoy carrying 50 tons of gunpowder sets off. When they reach the city gates, James tells the guards the carts are full of bodies infected with cholera. The guards decide to inspect the wagons, but soon let them pass. After delivering the gunpowder, James warns Barton that if his factory is discovered, he will know exactly who to find. The next morning, chaos breaks out at the East India Company headquarters. The owner of the farm, hoping to claim a bounty, reports James's treasonous activities. The company plans to seize the factory, but the secretary Frey secretly visits James and tells him everything discussed at the company meeting. James immediately rushes to his factory and orders everyone to move the gunpowder before the company's men arrive. When the East India Company's men arrive at the factory, they find it empty. In anger, they destroy James's only ship, which had been under the protection of Atticus. This gravely provokes James, and he goes to the riverbank to calm down. Winter, Helga's daughter, finds him there and brings him a bottle of wine. After drinking, James passes out and sleeps through the night. When he wakes up, he sees Winter's lifeless body nearby. People gather to pray over her, while James watches from a distance, realizing that Helga will now see him as her daughter's killer. The next day, Helga visits the East India Company and tells them everything she knows about James supplying gunpowder to the Americans. Her words seal his fate. Later that evening, Frey rushes to tell James that the company has ordered his arrest for high treason. James, calm as ever, already expects it. Soon, special forces sent by the royal family arrive. James is arrested and tortured for a confession. Under British law, anyone found guilty of treason loses all property to the state. The East India Company stands to gain everything James owns if he admits guilt. The torture is brutal, but James refuses to break. He demands a meeting with Stuart, the chairman of the East India Company, and promises to confess afterward. They agree, believing they have won. When Stuart enters the prison cell, James confronts him. He threatens to expose Stuart's past, how 10 years ago, during an illegal slave voyage, a disaster killed over 100 people at sea. James was the only survivor. If that truth becomes public, the East India Company would be ruined. James demands three things: that all charges be dropped, that Helga be freed, and that a ship be prepared for him to leave Britain. Stuart agrees, knowing he has no choice. Back at the company, Stuart orders his men to carry out James's demands. Helga and her companion are taken out of the city and handed over to Atticus. As a favor to Stuart, Atticus kills them both, ensuring there are no loose ends. Soon after, Stuart withdraws all charges, and James is released from prison. James prepares to leave Britain with the safe passage promised by Barton. But Barton, who has been playing both sides, reveals his true colors. He demands that James trade Nootka Sound in exchange for the safe passage. Barton is not just an American spy. He also works secretly for the East India Company. When James discovers Barton's betrayal, Barton meets a grim and violent end. James and his loyal followers prepare to leave the country with their supplies, waiting for the company's ship to arrive. As they wait, Stuart's men deliver the travel documents. Meanwhile, the royal regent signs a death sentence for James. But James has already anticipated this move. He orders his people to prepare an ambush. Soon, British special forces arrive at the dock. A massive explosion shakes the harbor as James's war against the royal family begins. His people defend the gates with everything they have. Men, women, and even the quiet chemist George fight fiercely for survival. James and his men try to escape to the company's ship, but British soldiers block the only way aboard. However, they manage to fight their way to the ship. Just when things seem hopeless, the ship slowly begins to move, thanks to the efforts of James's companions. The series ends with Stuart receiving a mysterious package sent by Barton before his death. Stuart believes he has finally won, unaware that James has already escaped. As he opens the package, we see a huge explosion in the building. If you love interesting recaps like this, hit the subscribe button and check out other great recaps on our channel.